Hi, this is a quick video to augment the Q&A with Mr. Bransby that will be happening on Tuesday at 3:30, and we hope to see you there. A few general notes before I begin. These exercises, all notated by Mr. Bransby himself, are mostly in the key of E major, but they are designed to be done in every key, and it's up to the student to transpose the exercises and follow the patterns and concepts that are established in the introductory key of E. I've actually had past students take the time to notate out these exercises in other keys because they found it easier that way. But I do think that there is value in working from one key and transferring in your head everything to a new key. And I really do think it helps improve the musical ear and the musical brain. I'll admit, when I was younger, I wrote out a few of the more difficult keys myself, so I completely understand the temptation to write it out. But I do think ideally the intention was not to write out every exercise, scale, and arpeggio in every key. All right, let's talk about the scale sheet first. You'll notice in 2A and 2B we have the same two scales with the same fingerings, but the bowings are different from each other in that the slur on the pairs of slurred quarter notes begins in 2A on the odd notes, or the first and third notes of each measure. But in 2B, the slur on the pairs of slurred quarter notes begins on the even notes, or the second and fourth notes of each measure. So if the bowing patterns for each of these are followed, the exercise makes for a very, very efficient and time-saving approach to improving shifting through a slur and through a string crossing. And it makes the player go through every possible combination on a scale of shifting through a slur and or a string crossing on the scale. A caveat about fingerings: no, you don't use these E major scale fingerings on every scale like F, G, and all those. The fingerings are not transposable, and so the same fingering for every scale, although convenient, is not suggested here. So please don't try to take these scale fingerings and try to retrofit them to other keys. Um, when selecting fingerings for the subsequent scales like F, G flat, G, A flat, and so forth, pick fingerings according to the sound that it gives you. So it's all about sound. So you try to pick fingerings that use as much string length as possible before you shift, and play at least two notes in a position before shifting. So no double shifting. My colleagues are sometimes perplexed at why I make it, my violin and cello colleagues and viola are perplexed at why I make it so difficult for students by not allowing them to use transposable fingering patterns for scales. But I want them to find fingerings that give them the best sound on every note in every key. And that usually means a lot of different scale fingerings that they have to learn. In the end, I think it's worth it. As the player progresses to faster scale variations, 3, 4, and 5, it's important to stay light but firm in the fingerings of the left hand, with the fingers always curved, firing and lifting, but not plodding and being too deliberate in their execution. And it helps a lot when the shoulder and back remains as relaxed as possible. Notice that the fingerings change slightly in thumb position as there are more notes to position before shifting, emphasizing that in slower tempos there are different fingerings, lyrical fingerings, than in faster tempos, which require more faster technical fingerings. On the descending portions of the fast scale passages, it's important to monitor the left hand to make sure that when it shifts from the higher position to the lower position, that the hand shifts immediately to the hand position with proper spacing. I like to think of it as snapping to a hand position like it was snapping to a quantization grid in a digital audio workstation. So think of shifting to a hand position as well as shifting to a finger when going through the faster variations of the scales, so that a finger is always contextualized within a hand position. And most importantly, avoid adjusting into the hand position after the shift. So you never want to shift back like this and then open up the hand again to the hand position after you shift. Moving on to the arpeggios, when picking fingerings, as it's stated in print at the bottom of the arpeggio sheet, don't shift twice in a row, or in other words, hand position should contain at least two notes before the next shift. You can have pivots on minor thirds, like between the G sharp and B on the D string, and that works really well. One way to, the neat thing about these exercises, arpeggios, one way to really improve intonation through these exercises is to focus on one note throughout a passage in an octave. And even though the same note may be realized with a different finger in a different position, it's still the same exact note musically. So those notes should be monitored so that they match exactly in terms of pitch, and if your bass lets you do it, in terms of tone, regardless of the fact that they may be played with a different finger. So I think it really improves intonation a lot in general. And finally, as I was reminded very recently, just last week, um, after you do these arpeggios, immediately tie them to excerpts that share the same challenges. For example, the arpeggios in Ein Heldenleben or the arpeggios in Schubert's great C major symphony in the third movement, so that you immediately put these exercises into an excerpt context so that they're not just, because perfect scales won't get you an orchestra job, but the perfect excerpt might. So make sure you make the translation between arpeggio and excerpt. All right, going on to the four diatonic groups exercise, the four-note diatonic groups exercise. These were very important to me, probably the most important. The exercise already has a lot of detailed instructions at the bottom that Mr. Brandsby points out. For me, this exercise encapsulates the most important shifting concept that I got out of all the exercises that I did it when I was in school at IU, and that is the maintaining of the hand position on the descending scalar patterns. I think I mentioned this before. And it's noted in the sheet music already. When descending, in quotes, when descending, land with the entire position perfectly spaced. All the fingers should be firmly on the strings so that when the top note is released, the lower note, the first finger, will be in tune without lifting or additional sideways motion. I've also found that the regimented and repeating fingering pattern that gives the player a sense of temporal context of shifts, meaning that the shifting motions themselves in this exercise can instill a sense of rhythmic discipline in the shifting motion, which comes in very, very handy when learning to play fast scalar passages and where the precise timing of the shifts become paramount to playing cleanly. It's not, I didn't realize the value of that until much later on after I left school, but follow the fingering patterns because it really instills a sense of rhythmic a rhythmic nature to your shifting. Finally, there's this hand position exercise. Sometimes people email me asking me for this. The exercise may not seem related to the session on shifting, but it's included because it's important. It's a very, very important exercise in and of itself, and it tells you why right there. But it's also related to shifting in that because when these shifting exercises emphasize maintaining hand positions through a shift and through a string crossing and through a slur, the hand positions themselves need to be solidly developed. So solidly developed hand positions are very related to good shifting. And on top of that, I rarely believe in silver bullets, but after I did this hand position exercise, it just drastically improved my Hofner excerpt, especially slurring across the strings on the fourth finger and the spiccato string crossings on the Hofner. So I would really suggest taking a look at this. And on a last note, I'm making this video for the virtual convention mainly, and they need some kind of video, so that I'm hoping this video serves that purpose, but I also hope you find it useful. I also want to put in a disclaimer. I don't claim that all of this stuff is directly from Mr. Bransby's teachings. He can clear that all up if I got it all wrong at Q&A today, and that's perfectly fine. I don't remember, as most students of a teacher, I think I don't really remember exactly the line is between Mr. Bransby and then me taking what he taught me and making it my own. And so there, somewhere along the line there, I'm sure I put my own spin on things. So I'm just putting that out there. Well, I hope to see you at the Q&A. Mr. Bransby will be there. Susan Cahill and I will be co-hosting it. And thanks for attending the virtual convention. See you later.